Hello and welcome to the next episode of our Let's Keep the Conversation Going series. I'm delighted to be joined today by Richard Croll, who's Regional Manager at Equifinance. Richard has an inspiring story to share, and I'm really looking forward to this episode. Richard's built a respected career in specialist finance, but also overcome some life-threatening illness that has shaped perspective on life, resilience, and his own personal mental health. Today's conversation will explore Richard's professional and personal journey, the challenges he's faced, and the insights he's gathered along the way. Certainly going to be some great coping mechanisms. And Richard, it's a pleasure to have you in. Good morning.
Good morning. Hi, Jason. Excited to be here and grateful for the opportunity.
No, thanks for joining. Well, what we do with each of these episodes, mate, if you've not seen them, is we always start by just a bit of a whistle stop tour through through the guest's journey through financial services. So let's start at the very beginning and take us through that journey all the way up to where you are now at Equifinance.
Yeah, sure. Well, as with many people in our sector, financial services, that didn't ever set out to deliberately go into mortgages and specialist lending. I was actually trying to make it in the music industry as a sound recording engineer, and I was working for Mickey Most, the famous music producer in St John's Wood, as basically a runner, doing odd jobs, getting sandwiches, etc. And I thought that was my path, and then just sort of living life and sort of moving in different directions, working holidays. I just realized actually that wasn't in my heart, and I just got a job working for a temping job working for a brokerage called the Loan Processing Centre, which was owned by Tony Sutton of Specialist Hub as of today. And that was my intro into the world of second charges, specialist first charges. So some of the lenders that were around at that time that aren't around anymore, like First Plus, Endeavour Personal Finance, Cheval, these sort of lenders have either gone or evolved into something else. And that's where I kind of learned how to sell second charges, sell first charges directly to customers and to introducers, and just that whole world of, not on the high street. So from there, I sort of moved into more underwriting roles for iGroup, G Money, and then after that, SPPL, were part of Lehman Brothers. And then from there, I don't need to give a history lesson of what happened in 2007 and 2008 with Lehman Brothers. And then from there, after redundancy, went on to work for brokerages, set up my own brokerage for a period of time, doing bridging, commercial, second charges, etc. And then in 2010, my mother passed away, and I was like 32, 33, bit of a crossroads in my life, sort of trying to keep one foot in the industry at Loans Warehouse with Matt Tristan, and just sort of built things back up from there. And for the last almost 10 years, I've been a BDM, sort of field sales for first and second charge lenders. HSBC was part of that journey as well, which was an amazing experience as well. But second charges and specialist lending is, now my kind of forte, my area of expertise. So and here I am now talking to you.
Amazing, and what a great job account management is. I mean, look, I've got an advising start to my financial services career, and I think moving into account management, I know, my dad back in the day, God bless him, he's not around, but he couldn't believe that I was getting paid for talking to people, trying to persuade them to use my products, and taking them for a bit of lunch and out to a bit of sport. And I know the roles evolved massively since maybe back in the day, but what a great job it actually is to be an account manager, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's like, I think what really sort of makes it sort of rewarding, if you like, for me, of why I actually do it is, and I don't want to sound cheesy here, but it's just, as Jason, a lot of a salesman's role is not just selling, it's also fixing problems and coming up with solutions. And that is what kind of makes me tick as a person, like, you know, being presented with a situation and thinking of how you can solve that, and then you look at the rewards and the results of your involvement, and you're adding value, and that's kind of the sweet spot for me. I'm sure you would agree.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, mental health and well-being, which I know is the topic of conversation today, is
Yeah,
dealing with, constantly through the day, dealing with bumps in the road, dealing with challenges, does bring its own, um, uh, I suppose, cross to bear almost, doesn't it? So how do the mental health bit? I know we'll talk about your illness, your illness in a moment, but
yeah.
mental health and well-being, I know you're passionate about it as a subject, but why are you so passionate about mental health and well-being?
um I would say, you know, I've got a passion for mental health because, you know, because I've had an experience of having to deal with something that's traumatic. um you know, I had to find a way to deal with that, and there's no shame in showing vulnerability, and there's no shame with sharing how you're feeling. And I'm always looking for an opportunity to try and pass on the baton of that, and so yeah, that's where my passion comes from.
And can you share a bit about the illness and the
Yeah,
journey you've
yeah,
been through? Just talk a little bit
yeah.
about
So
that.
lockdown 2020, you know, we're all under lockdown, we're all, you know, furloughed, whatever, going through this horrific sort of life experience altogether. And then sort of towards the end of 2020, I had some blood in my poo, and it was traumatic to say the least. And I immediately called the local doctor's surgery, explained to them what had happened, and they told me to immediately go to my local hospital to get it sort of diagnosed and checked out, and sort of yeah, got insisted on an urgent 2 week, what's called a 2 week urgent referral, which was a little tip I got from my auntie that was working in the NHS at the time, and started going in the system, going through it all, and yeah, it kind of got diagnosed as stage 3 bowel cancer, and within less than a week, they said, right, we can do an op with you tomorrow. Sorry, next week, and we can remove the tumor that we can see in your bowel. And it was all very quick. And you know, lockdown, sort of COVID, masks. You know, it was just a very compounded situation at the time. And but the one thing I will say about the NHS is that for all the political issues that we keep reading about every day, when it comes to an illness like cancer, that it's extremely good. You know, it's really ring fenced, and it's not, you know, it's not all bad, because the experience that I had in a difficult time of lockdown and COVID was absolutely second to none. It was like first class. So
That's Richard. Richard, I was going to ask there. I mean, that moment. So you've got all this unusual circumstance of people walking around with masks and all that.
yeah,
That COVID focus that was in place there. Actually being told that you'd got stage 3 cancer. What was that? What was that moment like? Because again,
yeah,
I'm pretty
yeah,
good at being able to empathise, but I just can't begin to imagine what it was
yeah.
like.
It's just sort of disbelief, shock, horror, sort of sadness, stress, anxiety, all those kind of traumatic emotions all sort of come rushing in, and just sort of disbelief really. And but bizarrely, or maybe not bizarrely, but just I'm quite proud of myself of how resilient I was able to sort of handle it, how resilient I was to be able to handle it. And to the point where the consultant, once he told me, because I was sort of, I didn't react immediately, he sort of said, "Oh, are you all right? Did you already know?" And like, because I was acting as though I knew, but I didn't know, but I was just like emotionless, you know, just inside it. It was crazy.
Yeah.
But you know, they take you into a room and they kind of get a chart and they show you what it means, etc. And it was just very harrowing and traumatic. Kind of had a keyhole operation, and about sort of this much of my bowel on the right side was removed. It's called a bowel resection, and then recovered from that for 6 weeks, well looked after, and then I was then on this journey of treatment, chemotherapy, and they do a CT scan before and after chemotherapy, and so I'd done the CT scan, and then the day of going into the Royal Marsden unit at Kingston Hospital, fantastic facility. The Royal Marsden's where the Princess of Wales had her treatment recently, so I feel quite privileged to have been there. I sort of then got a double whammy of bad news, which was to say that the CT scan showed that unfortunately the cancer had spread to my liver, and that's when my world really caved in, because just when you thought that you'd caught it at stage 3, you'd had the op, you've got it removed, and you was just on this preventative chemotherapy journey, you got hit with that. And I'll never forget the words from the female doctor, and the look on her face, sort of looking at me, telling me that it's treatable, but it's not curable. And it was just like, well, what does that mean? And all these uncertain questions going around in your mind. And so I think, obviously, when the disease travels from one place to another, that is the technical term for stage 4. But if you like, I would like to say it was 3.5, stage 3.5, not stage 4, because it was caught in between. So I went on a journey of a liver resection, 20% of my liver removed, and that was in June 2021. Since then, I've been cancer-free with a series of CT and MRI scans with sort of dye solution going into your veins to highlight stuff, and all this amazing sort of techniques of scanning and monitoring, and that was every 3 months. And then that moved to every 6 months, and then from 6 months to once a year. So I'm now in this cycle of once a year. The last scan I had was November 2024, last year, and all came back completely clear. And my consultant said to me, your odds now of the disease returning are, things are 80-20 in your favor. So there's only a 20% chance of it coming back. And if you'd given me those odds at the beginning, I would have took that within a heartbeat. It's quite sort of amazing, really, because when you say words like stage 4 liver cancer, society is very naive and very kind of don't quite there was lots of comments like, oh, your hair's not fallen out, or you've not lost much weight, and but there's lots of myths around the illness that just aren't true. So when you hear someone's got cancer, or someone who's got cancer, we all naturally think the worst, because it's that sort of taboo subject. But I'm here to sort of say it really isn't, and because there's so much nuance to it. and treatment's a million miles better than what it was even 10 years ago. Never mind, anything else. So yeah, so it's you can imagine that that journey and that experience has brought with it huge trauma and huge difficulty mentally. So yeah.
Have you got your head around this? This treatable but not curable. So obviously you learn to live with it, and we'll come back and talk about resilience and maybe some of the toughest challenges in a minute. But how have you coped with this treatable, not curable kind of message?
Well, it's kind of like a neither here nor there statement, isn't it? It's like we like to kind of define and have a definitive with everything, don't we? And it's like, unfortunately, that kind of position is neither. It's on the fence, isn't it? And I think it may be a bit more of a potentially a political thing from the NHS, perhaps, where they can't say that they've cured you because from data, from case studies and experience, they can't say we've cured you. But they do know that they can treat you as and when things happen, if they happen. So I think the NHS have to be very careful about the words that they use when they're talking to patients. So that's one perspective on it. I think it just, I suppose where I've got to with it in my mind, Jason, is that you almost have to sort of have a bit of respect for the disease and don't take anything for granted. Keep your feet on the ground and don't get too sort of cocky. And that's a coping mechanism, and that's a survival technique. That's how I deal with that, really.
How did you push through the toughest moments? So you mentioned mental resilience there. What was that? I don't know, the support structure around you and the family. You mentioned the care there and how strong the NHS were at stepping up. But just how do you push through those really tough moments and find those coping mechanisms?
Yeah, on the sort of mental resilience side of things, it just things just sort of seem to just sort of like fall in place where my mind went into a survival mode, like a fight mode, flight or fight mode. And what I mean by that is that it's like my strong personality traits within me became amplified. So an example of that would be, I'm someone, and this is probably why I'm in sales, Jason, is that I'm someone that does have a blind determination to keep going, to keep pushing, and not knowing when I'm beaten. And that kind of trait that I have kind of got amplified, and that really helped me to become resilient and become thick-skinned to the situation. Some of the toughest moments. You're walking to the theatre room to go and get the operation, and you've got weed trickling down your leg because you're that scared, and but then a couple of minutes later, you're out because they've given you like a local anaesthetic, and like the next thing you're waking up, so that but to deal with that, you face that fear, and that's the only way to overcome it, to actually turn around and face it, which is not easy at all. So resilience. Being in sales, you need resilience, and that skill set sort of became very, very useful for me at that particular moment in time.
It's a good point, that, and about this resilience. And look, we're blessed to have worked in this marketplace, both of us, for a number of years, and it's a brilliant sector to work in. And loads of loads of bumps in the road, loads of issues we've seen as we've gone through the years. And just when you think it can't get any crazier, something else seems to appear. But it is it builds a character, doesn't it? And I think the thing with mental health as a continue the journey with MIMHC, Richard, is that it isn't a cop out. life is tough, isn't it? We have to get through the daily challenges, and in a professional environment, there are going to be highs and lows. There are going to be days where stuff doesn't get offered, doesn't complete as you'd hoped. There's going to be issues with criteria as you try to get a case
Yeah,
through, and
yeah,
the daily grind is tough, isn't it?
yeah. And we're all wearing a mask, aren't we? And we're wearing a work hat. Sorry for the analogies, but they're all
Yeah,
true. And when we're wearing these masks, we kind of leave the human side of us behind us, which isn't natural. So yeah, it's the more we can be more authentic in our roles, the
yeah.
better, I'd say.
What I mean, coping mechanisms wise, what else? So obviously, characteristic wise, having that determination. I love the not accepting defeat kind of competitive spirit that's
Yeah,
there. But what other kind of coping mechanisms did you call upon? And before we talk about maybe how others around you were feeling as you were going on this journey, just what was that support like to help you get
yeah,
things
yeah.
through?
So yeah, just on the support and the coping mechanisms. So the support was just immense. As you can imagine, and I've got to give a massive shout out to Equifinance, because as soon as they knew of my situation, immediately it was like, don't worry about work. You're on full pay indefinitely. Don't even think about worrying about income or how you're going to pay the bills. You know, board level, board meeting have said this man is to receive full pay for as long as it takes. And I cannot tell you the relief that they gave me and my family, because you just you just focus on what you need to focus on, and you haven't got to worry about that over there. And yeah, that was just huge. And obviously my wife and my friends and my family sort of just showered me with love and sort of affection and attention, and that was a huge thing. And you know and that was all through COVID, by the way, and lockdown,
Wow.
where you couldn't be within a few feet of each other, or you couldn't go into someone's house. So got people turning up at my house with a chemotherapy hamper that loads of people have had a whip round and contributed to this big chemo hamper just to make me feel comfortable. And just very overwhelming, these sorts of things that were going on. And being in the hospital, actually recovering, and not allowed visitors, that made it really bad, really tough to contend with. So there was, needs to say, lots of sort of FaceTimes and phone calls, sort of, and thank God for technology, because it would have been really lonely. But the one thing I did have, Jason, was the belated, was it the Euros? It was supposed to be in 2020, but then it was in 2021. So I was there recovering from the second operation, watching England. And I knew I was all right and recovering when I started shouting at the television, shouting at Gareth Southgate to make a substitution when he wasn't. So I knew that I was on the road to recovery then. But yeah, I digress a little bit there. But
Yeah,
yeah,
and
so
that I mean, again, that isolation is because it's in that COVID environment. I mean, that interestingly, we've done our last survey. Um, look, it always indicates each time we do the survey, we're going to do 2025s in the next few weeks. But each time we do the survey, guess what? It always shows brokers are working longer hours, not getting enough sleep. But I
yeah,
think what it did show in the last 12 months was it also showed more 75% of respondents were either working from home permanently or um, or hybrid, and yet because they were working from home, um, which we thought was maybe the panacea pre-COVID, mental health and well-being had actually worsened. So this isolation, this anxiety, this working from home where you might not speak to anybody else other than somebody over the telephone,
yeah,
is something that it really surprised me. But you're in a hospital trying to recover on your own with family, not able to come and see you in the way that you would have normally been able to have been visited. So that mental strength that you must have delivered, that determination and not accepting defeat, that,
Yeah,
wow, you've got some grit about you, mate. You must have.
yeah, massively. It was just it's I call it my superpower, to be honest.
Amazing.
And yeah, I mean, like, and just on that sort of coping mechanism sort of question that you put to me, the way you cope is you just practice gratitude. You face your fears, you don't look away. um when you're having I personally have, now imagine like you sitting there and you're contemplating all the worst things that could happen, and you go through this anxiety, not an anxiety attack or a panic attack, you go through this kind of you start believing your thoughts, and it's like a whirlwind, like a hyper anxious mindset. So I cope by going for a walk, and just walking it off, or just doing something to release it, and that goes for anyone that's got similar sort of mental health kind of traits like that. A simple walk around the block, or a power walk, or even if you're in an office, just if you can't sort of switch your PC off and go for a 10-minute walk, then you're working in the wrong place. Everyone needs to just be able to do that.
Yeah.
You know.
So that recovery, so you've been on that journey for recovery. So walking and being able to just again find time to just have clarity of thought has been important. And yeah, I would imagine conversation so with people around you is always that I think our strap line is always hashtag keep the conversation going,
Yeah.
and that the importance of just problem shared is a problem halved, right? So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so we spoke about that family support that you were getting in really difficult circumstances. But how was it for your family as you were actually going through what you were going through? How was your missus and family coping?
Yeah, well, I mean, beside themselves with worry, and I've got three daughters, 23, 17, and 7, and it's just must have been horrific for them. And thankfully, I had a friend and colleague, Neil Humber, who works for Bamboo Loans, who unfortunately went through the illness himself. I hope he doesn't mind me saying that, but he was able to tell me from experience, don't forget about your missus, don't forget about your wife. Remember to show your appreciation, because she's going through it just as much as you're going through it. And yeah, that kind of resonated with me, and I've done my best to try and keep acknowledging her and keep showing appreciation towards her, because that's the part of these experiences that people often get forgotten, isn't it? It's like you're focusing on the actual person that's got the trauma of the illness that they're going through, but it's the immediate people in that person's life that they don't get any comfort at all, do they? So yeah, it's really important to kind of include them in the whole package, really.
And how useful was Neil to having gone through that similar experience? How useful was it actually being able to have a conversation with somebody who could maybe give you a bit of an insight and
Yeah, just those little nuggets of little statements, little conversations, when people are reaching out to you, and it's like they're giving you little bits of wisdom, and all these snippets of wisdom from your friends and your family just all act as fuel to help you to maintain that resilience and that strength. So yeah, pretty amazing.
perspective. So obviously we're a good few years on now, and
Yeah.
we spoke there about maybe some of the coping mechanisms you're using as you recover. How has it changed your daily life in terms of that perspective you've now got, both maybe professionally and personally?
Yeah, well, like sort of how I view work now is sort of seem to have a bit more of a bird's eye view about work now. Um, and my manager, head of sales, is Des Styles. I don't know if you know Des Styles. He's very good at giving you little statements of perspective, and he always says to me, it's just a job, and they can't take your kids off you, sort of thing. And what he means by that is that it helps you to separate your day-to-day work from the bigger picture. And I kind of, thanks to Des, that's the kind of the way I deal with work now, is that we all want to do well, we all want to sort of reach our goals in work, but we just have to take that bird's eye view and remember that there's a bigger picture at play, and that nothing's that important. We've all got to do well and work hard, but we can't lose sleep over things that aren't going to plan.
Yeah, good stay, good wisdom. That. And then, how are you now?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, just kind of it's kind of like time is the biggest commodity, isn't it? When you're talking about this subject, but also from a mental health point of view, the more time that goes where you're in the clear, the more at ease you become, the more philosophical you become, the easier it is to talk to you now about it. I mean, if I was having this conversation with you maybe even 2 years ago, I probably would have not been able to have got through the first question. So yeah, time is a massive kind of fuel, if you like, to help you in terms of your mental health as of now. And in terms of my kind of medical position, touch wood, as far as I'm aware, I'm just on this road to recovery. And my next scan is going to be in November. And like I said to you before, I respect the illness. I don't get cocky. I just take each scan as it comes. And it just, the way I am now is I just want to just do everything now. But life doesn't work like that, does it? Because things take time to fall into place with your goals and what you want to achieve. So that's the issue for me, to try and kind of rein in my determination and desire to go to the next level with my goals.
Yeah, we're certainly seeing, again, the other stat that the survey threw up last year is we're seeing more companies actually having mental health and well-being support structures in place now. So it does look like we're making some progress. But how do you think we're doing in terms of breaking down maybe the taboos that still exist? And as you touch on, people coming forward talking about their experiences, is a brilliant start. But how do you think we're doing as a sector?
Well, if I could be a sort of brutally honest, in my personal opinion, I just don't think that there's anywhere near enough efforts. Obviously, we got your sort of efforts, which have obviously made a difference to me because I'm here now talking to you. Yeah. But I just think, where we are, where it's commonplace to have a first aider or a fire warden, it's not commonplace to have a mental health designated person, in my opinion, and it's not visible enough. So there's a hell of a lot more work that needs to be done in our industry. We've got sort of some initiatives that we can see, with diversity and inclusion or mentorship, and your organisation, and if anything, maybe all of those efforts can come together and create one big movement, But it's only through awareness of advertising. We all focused on advertising our brands and our products and services. We can do that easily, but wouldn't be that hard to also tag on, mental health charter and promote mental health first aiders, if you like. So yeah,
all right, and
I'll be able to support and help with that effort as well.
Yeah, thanks. And look, I absolutely agree. So I've been at this for 4 years now, trying to do it off the side of a desk, and I'm blessed to have 6 really strong, like-minded co-founders who tip in. But we haven't even got to first base yet, Richard. If I'm honest with you, we're just over 250 signatories, which we can touch about 20,000 individuals with those 250 companies. But we're still so much in this awareness phase. We've got 30 odd thousand brokers alone in the marketplace. And I think we've had a good collaboration with with IMLA. We're collaborating with Amy, and
Yeah,
I think getting awareness so that people become signatories and pledge to have mental health and well-being on their radar. We've still got so much to the results are nowhere near where I want them to be, and I think stage two then becomes around how do we serve the sector. So it's all right having raised awareness, but what do we need to do? So if it's workshops and getting together to share best practices, then great. If it's walking around a park and having meetings on the move rather than meetings in an office, we've just got to move into this propositional stage. And my objectives are a clear one, and our objectives are clear one as MIMHC. We just want to create a community which isn't digital focused. It encourages conversation and face to face getting together, but a community that cares for each other and has a focus on well-being. So we're a million miles away from where I want to get to, but ultimately, I do genuinely thank people like yourself for coming in and sharing stories, because we've got to start somewhere, right? And what Equifinance have done for you in that support is great, and we're seeing more of this with businesses, because again I think having people step forward and share stories like you're doing today is ace, but then being able to actually see how companies and the exec team support individuals who are going through whether it's medical challenges or those mental health challenges or whatever it may be, we're certainly starting to see increasing examples of a very sympathetic, empathetic approach. And I would
yeah,
imagine the loyalty that the business has got from you now, but I'd imagine you'd run through brick walls for them, wouldn't you?
absolutely. And that has had a massive impact on my loyalty. And you know, as we all get opportunities shoved under our nose all the time, and like you do always sort of take that what happened and that support that was given, and your considerations on that particular type of thing into account. And it more often than not, it does kind of sort of make you realise actually, grass is not greener, and I'm fine where I am.
Yeah. What about if there is somebody who is listening to this at the moment and maybe is in an environment where it's not as sympathetic and empathetic as it could and should be? What kind of advice would you give those people?
Um, Speak to a friend, speak to a colleague, speak to someone that you feel like you can turn to. I suppose going back to that piece on visibility of, if you can find someone that is a designated kind of mental health figure, yourself, anyone watching this now, if they want to send me a text, a message on LinkedIn, that they're going through this similar illness that I've gone through, or someone in their life is, I would thrive to sort of talk to them about it, because it's something that I can pass on and pass the baton on for and share. But yeah, I just, like you said before, there are, and this is one thing I wanted to say to you, is that life is full of sayings and cliches. But when life events happen to us, all these sayings and cliches all come to be true and actually have proper meaning. So a problem shared is a problem halved, actually. It really is. And the relief that anyone watching this now, the relief that they will get from just sharing the problem, even if they don't talk about it beyond sharing what the problem is, it'll be a massive weight off their shoulders, and it will help their mental health.
I mean, listen, that's an incredible offer from you to encourage others to make contact with you, and yeah, I'm sure you find people take you up on that. But it's a very selfless offer. So yeah,
Yeah.
I really
See,
appreciate
the
that.
thing is, Jason, when someone's going through cancer, other people treat you in a particular way, which is, you can see the look in the other people's eyes, that they're looking at you as if you're already a goner.
Wow.
And they look at you as someone with a disease, and that you know, and they don't know what to say, and it's awkward, and I know what that feels like. And I had a friend that I grew up with that passed away of lymphoblastic leukemia last year. His name was Scott Ladley, and I hadn't seen him for many years. And I went and saw him, and I just said to him, "Look, you know, I know we haven't seen each other for many years, but I just wanted to come and see you face to face, because I just wanted to tell you that I know what it feels like when people are looking at you and they're thinking that you know, they're thinking the worst, and that I'm here and I'm with you, you know." And I was looking into his eyes, and you know, he was really appreciative and grateful that I actually came all the way to see him and just shared that one thing with him, and it made me feel amazing, and I feel like it would have given him a nice bit of a warm feeling, you know. So that's what I mean by that.
Love that. Love that, genuinely, Richard. And look, kindness and appreciating others, and I know gratitude was something you mentioned
Yeah,
earlier on. And I just love all the, yeah, just love all the meanings in that. Is there? I'm conscious of time and just wondering if there's maybe anything that I've not asked today. You've obviously, look, it is really inspiring, genuinely, mate. I mean, to have that fear, you know, when you're just about to go into the theatre and explain it so, um, you know, brutally as you did,
yeah, yeah,
and then overcome it in circumstances which are, you know, are so unusual and would have been so difficult at the time, and you know that determination and that spirit you've shown. You know, fair play to you. You know, I
yeah.
do genuinely
Thank
take
you.
my hats off to you, and I love, as a touch, I love the way Equifinance stepped up to support you. But is there anything that maybe I've not asked that I could have asked, or any kind of lasting messages you wanted to leave the listeners with?
Um, yeah, I wrote a few things down here, and it was just to sort of, you know, we touched on it a bit before, and it was like, you know, if you speak to someone, you know, you'll make a friend for life, you know, and because you'll get like-minded people that have been, you know, speak to other people that have been through what you've been through, not just cancer, but maybe anxiety, depression, any type of form of mental health or
Yeah.
life event or any trauma. And you know, you know, it's imperative to reach out and talk to people, because you will make a friend for life. But the big sort of headline message I'd like to leave viewers with is, and this is not a plug for anyone, this is take out protection. Take out protection. I told you before, my mum passed away in 2010. She passed away from ovarian cancer, and when I took out my first mortgage with my wife, I was just like, we're having mortgage protection, we're having critical illness cover, because I was, you know, I had a lived experience of what I saw happen to my mum, and I was like, there was just no question. I'm taking that out, and thank the Lord I did, because I was able to claim on critical illness cover, and it's given some funds, some comfort, and some security for me and my family, and peace of mind. Should the worst happen, I know that my loved ones are going to be looked after. And you know, it's a massive taboo, isn't it? Subject, and you know, if you can afford to spend whatever it is in the pub, you can afford to take out a policy, and just forget about, you know, set it up and just forget about it. Because if it was £100 a month, whatever it may be, and you know, you wouldn't miss that £100, then you might as well take out a policy, because it's just going to go on crap, basically, that, you know. Or, you know, you buy a tip for the house, it ends up in landfill in 18 months, 2 years time. You know, just trying to get perspective here to say it, you know, just, yes, it feels like a waste of money, and that's never going to happen to you, but I thought that about me. You know, and you know, just so grateful that I just had that sort of determination and foresight to actually take out that cover. wasn't even
Great tip.
it wasn't even sold to me. It's like I told the mortgage broker, I want this.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, that's the biggest thing I want people to
It's a
hear.
great tip. It's a great tip, and look, yeah, you think you were representing maybe a L&G rather than Equifinance, but it's look, it's so important to during life with a provider for those around us, and look, we accept the sometimes it can be a burden, can't it, of being that provider for others. But ultimately, I can't think of anything worse than something happening and those around you all of a sudden having to struggle and not be able to conduct the daily routines that they'd normally be conducting. So I think it's a brilliant tip. And look, thank you, from the bottom of my heart, mate. Look, I really appreciate the honesty. I appreciate you taking the time to share your story with us. A brilliant offer, which, as I said, I know people will take you up on in terms of those who are going through similar journeys, reaching out to you. It's a great act. Appreciate that, and well done to Equifinance for them supporting you in the way that that they did during your during the period of poor health. But look, I wish you all the best. Have a brilliant day, a brilliant rest of the year, and as I say, many thanks for getting involved and being an advocate.
It's been a real pleasure, Jason. Thank you very much.
Cheers, Richard.
Cheers then.
Bye now. Bye.
Bye bye.